person and a player. I mean, seemed to be a decent guy. Where was he this great humanitarian? I mean, if he was a better person, I mean, what?
I mean, he did like charities with was it Down syndrome with kids, Olympics and stuff like that. Yeah, there were some things that were noted there. You're right. Maybe I should put that out there in regards to some of the things he did.
I mean, listen, he got along with his teammates. He wasn't controversial off the court. He was certainly one of the more charismatic NBA players of all time, because he would be in the air a lot. He was Air Jordan before Air Jordan, and they once had John Sally, who was better in the air, Michael Jordan or Dr. J, and he laughs at Dr. J. So they loved him as far as that went. You're building up what he did in that Portland series. He really played lousy defense, point blank. So I don't want to hear that he scored 40 points. If he scored 40, he gave up X amount too. I mean, even Bill Walton, said Dr. J had all the stats in that series, but he got outplayed. And Jack Ramsey, the Portland Trailblazer coach, labeled Dr. J as a lazy defender during that series. And they took advantage of him giving less than 100% on defense. Let's put it that way. He didn't dog it on purpose. It was just he wasn't committed to defense as much as he should have been, okay?
I could say that's fair.
Because the Sixers were a dysfunctional group. It's hard to be committed to defense when you look around you and there's chaos going on. That was going on with the Sixers. And also, he was teammates with Charles Barkley. And when Charles Barkley lists his greatest players of all time as top 10, even though Barkley has a little bit of an agenda against LeBron because he puts LeBron at number 7, so that should tell you something. He doesn't list Dr. J in his top 10. And considering he was teammates with Dr. J, and apparently they got along fine, you wonder. But Dr. J was the greatest player in the history of the ABA. He's one of those players who was better in the ABA than in the NBA. He was the equivalent of Earl Monroe switching over. Earl Monroe was a better player with the Bullets. Then when he went to the Knicks, he kind of blended in, and that's what happened a little bit with Dr. J. He was no longer the dominant player when he went to the NBA. He was an outstanding player, but he wasn't the dominant player where he would be the man and you'd build a team around him. He would be blending in with the other guys.
That's fair. I mean, but I think Dr. J was still unbelievable in NBA. You could argue he was a top 10 scorer of all time easily. I remember one shot when he went up and went underneath the basket and came back out and did a hook shot off
1980 against the Lakers.
Unbelievable shot that that later. And listen, he was Michael Jordan before there was Michael Jordan. That's
right. That play, and Michael Jordan was a little better. I mean,
better
defensively, and yes, but you're right. But no one had seen a player like Dr. J before. That.
I remember once at the end of one game in the ABA, I think it was a playoff game. I can't recall the team. Dr. J had the ball for last shot. And I remember his whole team clearing off to the side and just leaving him alone to let him do his thing. And, of course, he scored. Yeah. I mean, he was an ABA superstar. He was an, outstanding NBA player. He could have been a little more committed to defense in that Portland series, because if you're truly a superstar and your team's up 2-0, would a Michael Jordan team have blown the 2-0 lead and lost 4 straight? I mean, but it was with a dysfunctional group, and he wasn't the leader in the sense where I'm the man and you're going to be functional. We're not letting this get away. It's not like he took control of the situation. Maybe because he was a nice guy. He didn't want to make any waves.
Well,
I think that's fair what you're saying. I think it's fair what you're saying, because when I did the research, out of all the years he played in 16, he only had one defensive award, and that was in the ABA. He didn't have anything in the NBA.
But on the other hand, before he pushed on to football, I can remember Michael Jordan giving up the last shot to other teammates, and I also can remember the Celtics and the Pistons beating them down pretty bad when he first got there. So
Michael Jordan's supposed to give up the last shot and hit the open man.
This is what you said. What you said was that if he was the man, he would have took the last shot.
No, I never said anything about taking the
I
last
think
shot.
you did, Jack. I think
what
you
are
did.
you talking about?
James. Just so I'm hearing right, I heard him say that if he was really the man, he would have taken the last shot.
I never said that, James, about the last shot of a game.
I
was talking about when he took it in the ABA when they cleared off to the side.
No, I'm talking about when you were. I'm talking about in Portland. I'm talking about when you said in Portland that if he was.
I think I said that.
Oh, I know something.
He wasn't given the last shot. He should have taken the last shot, but it wasn't his call. The play was called by the coach to give it to another player, and I think that's a player that you're supposed to give it to. In Julius Erving to score the last shot to be able to tie the game.
That could be. All right. So anyway, let's get on to football. I was going to talk about Franco Harris first, but I'm going to talk about these guys because they came along a little before Franco Harris. That's the purple people eaters of the Minnesota Vikings of the 60s and 70s. And don't you guys miss nicknames on defense? I mean, I miss the nicknames on defense, right? When you had Doomsday Defense, the Fearsome Foursome, Overhill Gang, No Name Defense, the Steel Curtain, even into the 80s, right?
Killer Bees.
The Killer Bees, Jack.
The Orange Crush, which we're seeing again.
Sacks Exchange, the Big Blue Wrecking Crew. I mean, I miss all these names. But anyway, Carl Eller and Jim Marshall, Larson, and of course, the leader of that pack really was Alan Page. Alan Page from 67 to 77. Page had 9 Pro Bowls from 68 to 67. Both him and Carl Eller inducted into the Pro Hall of Fame. They were huge in the Vikings, winning 10 division titles in 11 years, collecting 44 sacks in 1968. And week 2, Marshall sacked Bart Starr in his own end zone for a safety. Minnesota ended up winning that game 26-13. In 1969, Eller and Page and Larson sacked the quarterback 49 times, only to beat by the Eagles later on a couple of years ago. They're ranked number 1, both in yards and points allowed. Carl Eller led the league with 15 sacks, tipping, intercepting balls against opposing quarterbacks. And as Jack brought up before, after they lost to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl back in 1970, I think it was after the first Super Bowl won by
Super Bowl 4,
Yeah, they ended up winning 27-10 the first time they played, forcing 4 turnovers and winning 27-17. Page led the league with 7 fumble recoveries that year. Alan Page finishes his career with the Bears, going to another Pro Bowl. I can remember him playing that. And he was so fast off the snap. He was like 237, 240 pounds, right? He was a linebacker kind of stature today. But he was so fast and hard to block that he would be beyond the block of the guard as soon as the ball was snapped. He also they retired him and Marshall's number in the Vikings, of course, in their Hall of Fame and in their Ring of Honor. He also went on to become a Minnesota Supreme Court judge. I mean, he was a very smart man, and also. He won the Medal of Honor, Presidential Medal of Honor. He was the most valuable player in 1971 for a defensive lineman. I think Lawrence Taylor is the only other guy to get that. And he also was NFL Defensive Player of the Year, 71 and 1973. And again, he had 3 safeties during his career, 2 interceptions, 23 fumble recoveries, 3 touchdowns. In the College Hall of Fame, where he played for Notre Dame. So this guy was just one of the best defensive tackles in the league when he played. And the guy was smart, a great player, And if it wasn't for that fearsome foursome, I already go back to the nicknames. If it wasn't for that purple people eater defense, the Minnesota Vikings would be nowhere close to what they were. Went to four Super Bowls and lost all four. But there's something to be said about making the Super Bowl. So Alan Page, a great defensive lineman for the Minnesota Vikings.
You know, they can always get by the LA Rams and their fearsome foursome, but then when they get to the Super Bowl, I mean, like you said, they lost the 4 Super Bowl games that they played in, but none of them were close, too. Something happened to them when they got to the Super Bowl. They were ineffective. And, you know, and that I usually would put a little on it on Fran Tarkenton, who was an outstanding NFL quarterback, but he wasn't one of the greatest of all time because he couldn't even move his team in the Super Bowl or do anything at all. And all, you know, in 3 of the Super Bowls they had Tarkenton, and 1 they had Joe Cap.
Right.
I think they lost 23-7 to the Chiefs, that Super Bowl number 4. And the closest they came is when they lost to a great Steeler team 16-6.
Right.
Meaning the purple people eaters did a good job with the Steelers, you know, on defense. I mean, they held that vaunted offense to 16 points, yet they can only score 6, and the game was never really in doubt. And then they lost to the Raiders, one of the games, I think 32-14. They were never really in that game. And then I forgot to score the other game. But the idea that we're talking about them means they have a nice legacy. But had they won a couple of those Super Bowl games, it wouldn't have just been a very nice legacy. It would have been a legendary legacy. You know, we don't look at the purple people eaters as legends per se, at least I don't, okay? But we look back on them very fondly as, you know, great players, a core group.
Yeah.
You know, the Purple Eaters, they were core 4, one of the great core 4 defensive lines in history.
Yeah.
I mean, you still can't consider them as great, though, Jack. I mean, that's still pretty tough to go to 4 Super Bowls.
Oh, they were great. They were great. I said legendary.
Right, yeah.
Are they legendary? Are they legendary?
I guess when I heard nice, that just means nice.
The Packer teams were legendary players because they won the Super Bowls, okay? You know, you kind of got to get over the top. I hate to say it. The best quarterback of all time was maybe Dan Marino, maybe. But because he never won a Super Bowl, and you compare his, you know, other quarterbacks to him who've been to multiple Super Bowls, it's hard to put Marino ahead of him, make a big argument, even though in actuality he might be better than they are. And that's what with the Purple People Eaters. Let's compare the Purple People Eaters to the New York Giants later on. I mean, the Giants had great defensive players, but let's say flip-flop it, and the Purple People Eaters and the Vikings won a couple of the Super Bowls, and the Giants never won a Super Bowl. Would we be talking about LT and Harry Carson in the same breath? We would acknowledge their greatness, don't get me wrong, but it would take the little edge off how legendary those guys won, the Giants, you know, if they never won a Super Bowl.
And I would say the same thing about the Bills in the 90s.
Yeah, but is it different? It's different because we're comparing a core of players. Like Jack says, if you're saying the Steel Curtain, right? That's legendary. The Steel Curtain won 4 Super Bowls. And you know, even though Terry Bradshaw was a decent quarterback, I don't think Terry Bradshaw was one of a great quarterback statistically, but he was the leader of the Pittsburgh Steelers teams. But it was because of that Steel Curtain that they won all those games, and maybe the running game of Franco Harrison. If we have a chance, we'll talk about him after Jack gets done. But the running game of the Steelers in that defense is really what won that game. Even doomsday defense. I mean, they had an unbelievable. You talk about doomsday defense, and they won Super Bowls just because of their defense. I mean, these teams were just unbelievable when it counted, right? I mean, at Minnesota, they won 10 divisions. They beat the Cowboys. They beat the Rams. But as Jack said, they didn't get over the top. And there's something to be said for that. And it's not their fault. I mean, in some cases, it's not their fault, but it doesn't matter. You know, they should have shut it down like the Ravens, like the Chicago Bear defense, like these guys who actually We don't even need you offense. We'll win the game ourselves. And that's what Jack's saying. I agree with that. And even though I love the Purple People Eaters, and I think they are one of the top defensive lines of all time, you can't say they are the greatest or among the greatest when you're talking about some of the other great defense.
But Mac, out of the 4 Super Bowls, if they had won 2, hypothetically, you could make a great argument that they were the best defensive line in NFL history had they won a couple of Super Bowls. We look back and we talk about that.
I mean, they have records that weren't broken until the Eagles had the 50 sacks. They had 49. So, I mean, that's how long their reign went statistically. But, what are you going to do? So, again, the Purple People Eaters, Alan Page, great defensive unit and a great defensive tackle. All right, Jack. Dave, hold on. Let me get your picture up here. We don't want to leave you out here. Here you go. Dave DeBuscher. And he was a lot of things. Wait till you hear our list of Dave DeBuscher, James. Not only a very, very good basketball player, but
I got a little Dave DeBuscher story when I was a kid. When I was a little kid, my mother took me to Madison Square Garden to see an NBA doubleheader. I know that's mind-boggling, a doubleheader. And the same team didn't play 2 games. We're used to that in baseball. Game 1 at the old Madison Square Garden, not the one that's up today. The Detroit Pistons are playing the Philadelphia 76ers in the first game. The Sixers with Wilter Still Chamberlain. Yes, I got to see him play 1 game live. And then the second game, the New York Knicks against the Atlanta Hawks. The Knicks weren't good at that time, but they'd been on a winning streak, an unexpected winning streak. So there was a little temporary excitement with the Knicks. Well, before game 1 of the doubleheader, it was a different time. Keep that in mind with security. You could get around a lot easier. It was allowed to go in the corridor. Okay? You didn't have to be worried watching your kids so carefully then. So I was able to go myself as a kid. And myself and a couple of other kids, we stick our heads in the Detroit Piston dressing room. We're just standing there, practically in the outer edges of the dressing room, hanging out with the door wide open. Imagine that. Out comes one of the guys, very angrily tells us to get out of here. I mean, what the heck are you doing here? I mean, that guy was Dave DeBuscher, he was something like 25 years old at the time. He was the Detroit Piston head coach, player coach. Dave DeBuscher. He first took over the job when he was 24. And it was in Dave DeBuscher, amazing guy, like you said, Mac. He wore so many hats. He was a pitcher for the Chicago White Sox for a couple of years. He once even pitched a shutout against the Cleveland Indians.
Wow.
For 2 years, he was a big league pitcher. At the same time, he was an NBA player. He was born in Detroit, so the Pistons had territorial rights to him at the time. So he became a Detroit Piston. And he was with the Pistons. He was their head coach 3-4 years, I forgot, with the Pistons. It didn't work out, him being the head coach, but just the idea that the Pistons would hire a 24-year-old to be their head coach. Comprehend that today, no matter how great any 24-year-old is. Are you going to hire him to be a head coach, even like a player coach? I mean, but it was a different time. So he was with the Pistons for 6 years. And then in 1968, they traded him to the Knicks, and that's when everything changed. He was a really good player with the Pistons. And what happened with the Knicks, he became part of, the legendary Knicks teams, a key part, a very important part. They won 2 championships with their core 5 of Willis Reed, Walt Frazier, Dick Barnett. Earl Monroe would join them for the second championship as well. And the Madison Square Garden crowd would always be chanting the term defense, defense, defense. And there was no one who was more the ringleader of the Knicks defense than Dave DeBuscher. Oh, and by the way, Phil Jackson was on that team. He was part of the defensive unit. Even though he became later, he got his fame, Phil Jackson, as a head coach. He was with the Knicks as a player for 2 championship teams, yet Phil Jackson is hated in New York. They should appreciate the time long ago when he was a player, but that's another story. And DeBusschere was very close. His best friend on the team actually was Bill Bradley, who became a United States Senator. Both eventually, Bradley and DeBusschere, Reed Frazier, they got inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame. And then DeBusschere, when his playing career ended, the guy was doing so many amazing things. He became GM of the New York Nets in the ABA. He became their GM. Dave DeBusschere was close friends with Robert Redford, the actor. So he used that as a perk. He'd take his head coach and his GM to Redford's house, and they went all going to a big, Hollywood movie star's home. And he moved on from GM of the Nets to commissioner of the ABA for a little while. And then he moved on from commissioner of the ABA to be in charge of basketball operations for the New York Nets. Yeah. And he's the guy, remember when they had that famous lottery, fellas, with Patrick Ewing, and they were calling down the numbers? And you see DeBusschere nervous, they go, yes! Because as soon as they knew the Knicks were going first, everyone knew Ewing was going to be the selection, and Ewing was going to be the absolute game changer. And DeBusschere was involved with so many things. He and his partners, he even was an owner of Ring Magazine, the boxing magazine, a while. This guy, the things he was involved with, like over and over and over. Tragically, at the age of 62, he had a heart attack suddenly on the streets of Manhattan and, tragically passed. But, just amazing career. When you look at all the different things, but he's mostly remembered as a player on the Nets. Right. And he was a great, great player, all-around player. And how do I describe? There were no weaknesses in this game. He wasn't a great scorer. He was a very good scorer, an outstanding rebounder, one of the toughest defenders. He was a combination of a few different players. He was stubborn on defense, like a Karl Malone, let's say, or someone like that. He would score like a Scottie Pippen in a way, I don't mean to overrate him and build him up too much. He was top of the line, top of the line player. He would make life miserable for the other teams, who would have the ball. He was tough under the boards, physically tough, wouldn't give any quarter to anyone.
Yeah, listen, I forget what the term they use of a man that does a lot of things and is good as a lot of things. I forget, there's actually a name for that, but he was good at everything. Listen, he was an 8-time NBA All-Star. As Jack says, this guy was a very good basketball player. You ain't going to put him amongst the greats, but he was very solid, very good when he played basketball, and very smart, man. Well,
Mac, I believe you being a jack of all trades.
Renaissance man. How's that? That's even better. This guy was good at everything and was into everything. He business-minded man, smart, could coach, could do almost anything. And that's what makes that guy so fascinating to me. Not only was he a great player, but, man, this guy was just smart and snap and was going after everything. And that's the type of guy I love, man. I love a guy like that. So go ahead, Jack.
Well, if he was with the Knicks now, for example, he would be Jalen Brunson's the guy with the Knicks now.
Right.
But if the Knicks had a chance to put a young Dave DeBusschere on their team right now, the only one they wouldn't cut would be Jalen Brunson. Everyone else would be moved off to the side, and he would be the guy clearly DeBusschere.
Jack, I got a good comparison. Josh Hart, an engine.
Oh, DeBusschere's much better.
I'm just saying that type of player, just an engine.
Yeah, they would cut it. They would trade Josh Hart away. Not a thing if they could have it. Josh Hart's very good. Very good. I'm not putting him down.
Yeah.
But DeBusschere was a great, great player.
Level high.
Not a superstar player. I wouldn't rate him. Dr. J, who you mentioned before, that was a superstar. Okay. Right. DeBusschere himself, you're not going to put him on a bad team, and he's not going to turn it around. He had his most value on a really good team. You put him on a good team, and he's the difference maker on a good team to elevate him to a championship team. That's what I mean. Like a Steph Curry, you could put on a bad team, and he'll make a bad team into at least an average team. He'll elevate them by a lot. DeBusschere needed to be on a good team, and he could have a tremendous impact. And it happened with the Knicks. Those Knicks teams he was on, no teams ever played as well together. They were so unselfish.
Yeah. Right,
was he a great two-way player, is what you're saying?
He was a great defensive player and a good offensive player. Good, on the offensive side of the ball. Not great. You're not going to post him up and isolate him one-on-one on offense. He wasn't quite that type of player. I'll give you he was a better version of Karl Anthony Towns. If Karl Anthony Towns elevates his game just a little bit, now you're talking about a reincarnation of Dave DeBusschere.
Wow.
But right now, Karl Anthony Towns isn't quite there, even though he shows signs that, coming close. But Karl Anthony Towns has to improve an extra, 15, 20% or whatever. Now you have Dave DeBusschere on your team.
Let's do a couple quick commercials, and I'll be back on the other
Football
side.
season is here, and SeatGeek is my go-to for buying tickets. Now, with SeatGeek, every single ticket is backed with their buyer guarantee. We've all had plans change, and when you can't make it to the big game, SeatGeek has you covered. They're the only ticketer that allows you to return your tickets ahead of the event for credit with SeatGeek swaps. So when things come up, I know that my tickets won't go to waste. So what are you waiting for? Download the SeatGeek app to maximize your possibilities and shop live events with confidence.
Yo, you already know it's your boy LCF. I just tore it up for ZodiacTv. Shout out DJ Epps. Oh man, it was great, man. We did an interview. Then I hit the stage. The crowd was amazing. They gave me all their energy. I gave them that energy back. Linked up with some dope artists in the building. ZodiacTv, man. Hey, we gonna celebrate for the rest of the night, you know what I mean? With some Bel Air. Shout out my nigga Rose. Holla at your boy. Boss shit, you already know. But we tore it up, man. Performance was amazing. The set was amazing. ZodiacTv, shout out y'all boys, man. Thank you for having me. You already know I'm gonna come back. Your boy finna come back. Go to work, did it all for nothing. Make sure y'all go get that single, available on all platforms. Let's go.
My girl just told me that she pregnant, we expecting the shit. So I had to buckle down, accelerate, no slowing down. Some people, that's why I don't come around.
Yeah, I play that for Jack every time I can because I know he's into the hip hop era. But anyway, yeah, ZodiacTv, check them out. Choice of new generation for sports and entertainment, and also on SeatGeek. Don't forget, folks, when you go there, when you are buy your tickets and you're ready to leave, hit that NSS promo code again, so that when you come back on to buy more tickets, which you will, you can continue to get incredible deals at SeatGeek.
I just want to say that I didn't mean to get carried away. I meant with Karl Anthony Towns on the defensive end. He's a good defender, Karl Anthony Towns, but if he picked it up just a little bit more, now you're talking about a Dave DeBusschere type player. Okay, I didn't mean to downplay Karl Anthony Towns. I elevate Dave DeBusschere into something he wasn't. Dave DeBusschere wasn't a superstar. I didn't mean to infer that he was. He was just as solid a player as they came. No weaknesses and tough as nails, and and a big piece of those Knicks championship teams, a very important piece, an essential piece.
There you go. All right. So let's talk a little bit about Franco Harris. People remember him as the person that got the Immaculate Reception. He's known for that. In fact, he died a few days before the 50th anniversary of the Immaculate Reception. He came from Penn State. Penn State is known for great running backs, believe it or not. We have a couple in the league right now, but he was from Penn State. Let's see. While he was at Pittsburgh, he was their main running back. Him and Rocky Bleier were together in the backfield, but Franco Harris was really the main running back. Strong, fast. He caught the ball well out of the backfield. And I give you some great stats for him. First of all, he was selected in the first round by Pittsburgh. He ended up playing 13 seasons, getting 12,120 yards, 4.1 yards per carry, caught 307 passes for 2,287 yards, a 7.4 yard per catch, had 91 career touchdowns. He was amongst the leaders at that time. And Franco Harris, again, I mean, I can remember him playing against in the biggest games in the Super Bowls and stuff, and they would rely on him a lot, especially for that ground game where they would keep the other team off the field. Terry Bradshaw would use him as a play action going deep to Lynn Swann and John Stallworth. I forget the name of the tight end. I think it was it Henratty? Terry Henratty, Jack. I'm trying to remember the tight end. No. Oh yeah, he was a quarterback. Yeah, you're muted. But he was a. You remember the tight end for Pittsburgh? I know he's pretty good too back that day. I can see him
having a blank too. Yeah.
But he was a very good tight end.
Stallworth with the wide receivers, and I'm thinking he tight end.
Number 84. I'm almost positive was his number. I can see him. I just can't remember his name. But anyway. And that let Terry Bradshaw have some time in the pocket to make them big completions downfield to Stallworth and to Lynn Swann. So Franco Harris, again, one of the greatest running backs in the history of football. I don't know where you would rank him today. I don't know if he would be top 10. I mean, there's a lot of running backs now that have gone past him. Emmitt Smiths, the Walter Paytons, of course, Jim Brown. He was third to Jim Brown for a while in yardage before he retired. But since then, I mean, we've had Ladale Thomas. We've had so many different running backs that have maybe gone by him. In fact, honestly, even O.J. Anderson ended up going by him. So, I mean, I think what happens is we got at that time when they retire, they end up. They put some people in the Hall of Fame, and then even when the other guys go by them for some reason, maybe it's because 4 Super Bowls, I'm not sure, but they don't allow some other people in the Hall of Fame, which I think is kind of wrong. But anyway, great part of that machine, 4 Super Bowls. So he ended up playing Seattle in his last year. I'm not sure how well he did there. I don't have the stats of that one year he played Seattle, but he ended up finishing with the Seattle Seahawks, which does happen a lot. People move on and try one more time somewhere else. So there you go. Franco Harris, major part of that running game.
Yeah, no, he was a great running back. But I'm going to tell you, as the years have gone by, there have been a lot of great running backs. I mean, I wouldn't rate him as high as, let's say, a Barry Sanders.
Right.
On Eric Dickerson. If I could ask you, Mac, it's all a matter of opinion, you too, James. If you had your choice, Franco Harris or Eric Dickerson, I mean, who do you really take? I mean, if they're both 22 years old and they have their career ahead of them, you go with Dickerson, you go with Barry Sanders, you go with Walter Payton. I think you go with Emmitt Smith. It doesn't diminish Franco Harris. He was a great, great back, but just, maybe a half step behind, some of the other greats. I mean, there's no shame in that at all. He was more grinder. He wasn't the most explosive guy. Rocky Bleier, his running mate in the backfield, was a great, great blocker, and they had, an excellent offensive line, which obviously helped.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that he's a step behind them, Jack. But again, at that time, he did go to 4 Super Bowls, which
no, he was a great player. Listen, he was a great player. But if you're talking about the greatest of all time, and you're talking about a short list, I mean, I look at let's say a Barry Sanders on my short list and think, is anyone better than Barry Sanders altogether? And you could compare a few guys to him, but Franco Harris just isn't quite there, but it doesn't diminish him. He's great. I mean,
Well, a little bit. Go ahead, James.
I was going to say, if I had a top 5, he wouldn't be in it. he just wouldn't be in it. I mean, he's a great running back, but he was a part of some great teams. Emmitt Smith is a great running back, but he was also a part of some great teams. I mean, look at people like Barry Sanders and Curtis Martin, going all the way back to some of these other players that didn't really have great teams, but they were just great running backs. You can almost say Walter Payton, some of those offenses that he had, man, they weren't really good, but he was just probably the best player on their offense. So it's just, I don't know. I mean, to have 2 Hall of Fame wide receivers with you as well, yes, that helps a lot.
Well, I think that also takes away, because if you have a Lynn Swann and a John Stallworth, I mean, and the Rams, who did they have as a wide receiver when Eric Dickerson was there? What was their 2 wide receivers? Can you name them? I mean,
not really. No.
I mean, it to me. I mean, it could take away, because you're not going to just give the ball to Eric Dickerson every play, which was basically what the Rams did. So I mean, they featured Eric.
But talking about short lists, even today, if I said, I like to use the example, well, if you could get these guys when they're 22 years old, you know how great they're going to be going forward.
Right.
Who would you take? And if I said you could have Franco Harris or Derrick Henry, and we all had to sit down, the 3 of us, and make a decision, I think the 3 of us would come to the conclusion, let's go with Derrick Henry, guys.
Definitely. I agree.
But it doesn't diminish Franco Harris was great. I mean, blankets. He's a great player. He was basically a grinder, not the most explosive guys. But, if you look at his career stats, he was the rushing leader, I believe, at one time. And, he was passed by Emmitt Smith. It's a question. Do we hold it against Emmitt Smith, James, also that he was on great teams? I'm not holding it against Franco Harris that he was on great teams. I just don't think he was one of the top few. I don't think you can make an argument. Nothing against him being on the Steelers. Yeah. But you seem to be holding it against Emmitt Smith. Well, he was on great Cowboy teams. We can't rate him as one of the best. I could play devil's advocate with Barry Sanders. Well, he had Calvin Johnson.
Never. He never. But Herman Moore.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you're right. Well, they went to the NFC Championship once in '91. Got lambasted against the Redskins at the time. But I'm not saying, look, I say Emmitt Smith is one of the top 5. He's one of the top 5 backs. I just don't think I wouldn't put him ahead of Barry. I think it's more so what I'm saying there. And looking at what you said about taking the backs early in regards to Franco Harris versus a guy like Eric Dickerson. Yeah, of course. Any day I would take Eric Dickerson just because of the talent. And I mean, you look and the numbers prove it in itself. There's 1,800 yards his rookie season and 2105, which still stands today as the best record of all time as a single season record. I'd take OJ for sure. OJ Simpson. I know we don't want to mention his name, but 14 games, 100 yards, every game. That's just crazy. It's just unreal.
Yeah, again, but who else did the Buffalo Bills have, right?
But Mac, we talked about winning, what it means. Thurman Thomas, for example, had the Bills won a Super Bowl or 2 instead of losing all 4, his name would have come into this discussion, perhaps.
Yeah.
They lost the 4th Super Bowl. Same Minnesota, they had Chuck Foreman.
Right.
He was an outstanding running back. No one talks about him because we talk about the Purple People Eaters to an extent, but we don't talk about Chuck Foreman because they never quite got over the top.
Yeah, they're the great backs, total backs, right? Out of the backfield, catching the ball.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
MVP. Thurman Thomas was an MVP.
I think the immaculate reception is really what set him apart, gives him his legend too, right? Because I mean, that play, he wasn't even going out for a pass. The ball was just hit back to him because the assassin hit wherever he hit, coming across the middle.
Jack Tatum, yeah.
And he ended up catching the ball and just ran for a touchdown, broke a few tackles too.
Well, the other thing is they lost the next game in the AFC Championship game to the unbeaten Miami Dolphins. And that was a great storyline going to that game. The Steelers were thought to be a team of destiny, and the Dolphins were too, in a way, because they were unbeaten. So in that, like 21-17, I think the score was that the Steelers won.
That is true. So, folks, we're getting near the top of the show. I'm going to play our last commercial, which is, of course, the Roku channel commercial. If you're watching the show now or later, go download that Roku app if you don't have Roku TV and get it. I mean, you're going to see a bunch of great shows. One coming up right after us right now is Keith Engel with the College Huddle Report. That will be coming up right after this show. Go ahead and download that. If you got Roku TV, just channel search the Roku channel search. Go hit National Streaming Sports. Boom, there it is. In fact, I'm going to show you how to do it. Folks, have a great day. Thanks for tuning in.
Introducing National Streaming Sports, live and on-demand sports talk programming that you can access 24/7. For the premier sports talk experience, tap into our Roku channel. Start your mornings with Mac and Jack covering all the weekend sports action. Then pour a cup and enjoy all the sports you can drink on the Coffee and Sports podcast. At midday, talk sports from east to west on the Coast to Coast podcast. Followed at night by some hot girl talk with Prim and Proper Sports featuring Sonia Pearson. Talk boxing on the Gloved Fist. Yankee fans tune in for Start Spreading the News. And there's more on the College Sports Huddle and Sports Scope with Robert Butler. There are 20 podcasts in all and 70 weekly shows, giving us a 3.4-star viewer rating. To find us on Roku TV, search for National Streaming Sports on the Roku search bar. Click on the logo and you're in. National Streaming Sports, live and on demand.